Hey everybody, it's Adam from Loose Pixel, and welcome back. Throughout the course of my career, teaching, YouTubing, working as a director, working as a professional artist for over 2 decades now, I've had the opportunity to work with many different artists, to teach many artists, to direct many artists, and to have many artists as colleagues professionally. And I have noticed quite clearly that there are trends in artists' personalities, in their work ethic, that most of the time directly translate into how much success they have or don't. I'm going to break it down into 3 simple points, and hopefully it'll serve as a bit of a beginning point, a launching pad, a point of reflection on where you are in your career, beginner, intermediate, or seasoned pro, and maybe help offer you a little guidance on where you could spend a little bit more time and energy to help fill the gaps if necessary. And I think one of the key primary personality traits that artists who struggle to find work very often fall into is that you don't necessarily have a healthy relationship with self-criticism. That you might be getting feedback from a colleague, from a friend, from a loved one, a fellow artist, and or a teacher or a director. Since I founded my mentorship 15 years ago or so, and since I've worked as a director, I have consistently noted that artists who tend to grow the fastest, who tend to have the best reputations professionally, and find their footing and stable careers, are the ones that tend to have a very open and inviting personality when it comes to constructive feedback. And I mean constructive as in somebody who has your best intentions in mind, and they're not just being douchebags and insulting your work. Of course, nobody should put up with that. But you're open to constructive feedback. And furthermore, when you receive what could potentially be very healthy, helpful feedback, you don't make excuses. And this is quite noticeable in people's personalities. Some people are very defensive or fragile when it comes to a professional trying to let you know what the shortcomings are in your work. Let's say, for instance, you haven't necessarily gotten a grasp on perspective. So when your teacher or your director, usually a teacher in this context, says your perspective's a little bit off, sometimes you can get away with a little bit of loose perspective, but in this case, I think it really stands out. That bookshelf looks really, really crooked. And it's clear to the teacher, because you're a little bit more of a beginner artist, that you're still wrapping your brain around what is an arguably very complicated thing for your brain to decode for the first time. It's one of the hardest things to overcome as a beginner artist. But the artist responds with, yeah, well, I don't like to be too strict with my perspective because it really restricts my creative freedom. Now, that argument, that comeback might, under normal circumstances, if you're speaking to a professional, be perfectly viable. Maybe you're somebody who's exploring cubism or surrealism. Maybe you're trying to break the rules of perspective to communicate something more profound. As a professional, as somebody who has already proven they are very capable and understand the concepts of perspective, but are deliberately fiddling with those rules for a more important reason, for a more personal reason. But to a beginner, you need to fix your perspective. You have 0 drawings proving the fact that you know how to draw perspective well, because, understandably, it's tough. It requires work. But from a professional trying to give you professional advice, if you do intend on working professionally, if you do intend on pursuing this as a career and hopefully one day making a stable salary from that, you're not fooling anybody. We know it's hard. It was hard for us. It was hard for everybody else I've ever taught. It was hard for everybody in my class when I was studying in college and university, when I first started taking classes. It's hard, but it's necessary. And by saying, I don't like restrictive guidelines because I like to express myself freely, that's fine and dandy when you're drawing on your own, in your closet, where nobody can see you. But the moment you're sharing your work with the public, the moment you're sharing your work in a professional setting, that doesn't fly anymore. That would be the same thing as me trying to hire somebody to fix the electricity in my house, and I say, have you ever taken any courses in electrical engineering? And they're like, nah, I don't want to bog myself down with that kind of stuff. Just let me express myself freely. Well, no, because I don't want you to burn my house down. And I also don't want you to make my artistic project or my game fail because you don't feel like following the rules. So those rules are in there for a reason. They help you to communicate more fluidly to your audience, depending on the style of work that you do. A good example of this would be anatomy. And I'm guilty of this too. Back in the beginning of my career, when I started getting into character design and animation, and I only got into creature design a little bit later on, I was afraid of anatomy. It was a subject that really, it intimidated me. So I put it off, probably for a little longer than it should. And I managed to make my way pretty far into my education, but not very far into my professional career, not having a solid grasp of anatomy. I avoided it because I was afraid of it. And so long as I avoided it, my drawings were weak, or they weren't nearly as strong as they could be. And that lack of credibility in my designs when anatomy was required, it showed. And it was a bit of a thorn in my side emotionally. I felt like it was a weakness. It was an avoidance. And that impacted my self-esteem in a negative way. When I finally sat down to learn, and I said, Adam, if you want to be taken seriously as an artist, you need to, and if you want to work professionally as an artist, you're going to have to buckle down and learn this stuff. And I learned it. I didn't only learn it, and it didn't only help me gain the confidence I wanted when it came to doing these kinds of designs, but I ended up falling in love with it because I realized that anatomy was one of the most fascinating things to know. Furthermore, one of the most powerful tools to creating characters and creatures. And once I started getting a solid grasp of it, and when I started getting to animal anatomy and all these different types of things, it started to become an incredibly powerful creative tool. But the only reason I didn't learn was because I was too much of a chicken. And I work with a lot of artists that are afraid to admit the fact that they're weak at something and they need to fix it. If your colors are too saturated, if they don't harmonize, you need to harmonize them. And whether or not you have some personal reason why you want to keep it that way, well, fine, keep it that way. But don't expect anybody else to enjoy your work. It's the same way I don't enjoy listening to music if it's somebody who doesn't know how to achieve harmony with their sound. It's the same thing when it comes to colors. You need to learn. And if you don't know it and it's something that's important to your career, then you owe it to yourself and you owe it to your career to just do it. The second part of this same point is the ability to distinguish between objectivity and self-deprecation. And a lot of you who listen and comment are guilty of this as well. I very often read comments from people who insult themselves a lot, or they regard feedback as an insult. And that's not a healthy attitude to have if you want to be a professional. In no attempts to call anybody out here, because we're all guilty of this, all of it, myself included. But I'll very often read comments from people who say, I suck at this, or I'm terrible at that, or I'm pathetic when it comes to this, or, I give up on this, blah, 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 blah. A lot of being fed up, a lot of blaming yourself for being bad is not helpful. It's not going to help your career. What it's going to do is it's going to weigh you down. It's going to intentionally or unintentionally program you to hate what you do. And that's not what criticism and that's not what feedback should do. Feedback should be honest. Sometimes direct, perhaps there might be a little abrasive, but it should not discourage you. And if you have a professional attitude when it comes to feedback, not only from others but to yourself, it should be eye-opening, it should be informative, and if you have a very healthy relationship with feedback, it should be inspiring and exciting. I mean, at no age, at no experience level are you immune to feedback. I'm a professional who's been doing it for many years, and I sometimes get feedback from people who are not even artists that have a really, really good point. And I go, you know what? I never thought of it that way. Let me give it a look. In fact, I would argue that very often some of the best feedback that I get on my art is from people who don't draw, because they represent my average audience, non-professionals who are just reacting to my work in a very honest and objective way. So I take all of that to heart. But when it crosses the line and it becomes insulting, then I say, hey, are you trying to help me or hurt me here? Because you're just making me feel bad, which most people do, by the way, because most people aren't cruel. And or if I'm doing that to myself, then you need to check yourself and say, is what I'm telling myself actually going to help me grow? Or is it contributing to me feeling exhausted, worn out, and discouraged at the end of the day? And if necessary, make the change. And as the last point, the last part of this point, which kind of piggybacks off the last point, is you need to understand the power, not only for yourself, but also outwardly, of having a positive demeanor. People who get hired are people who have a proactive, positive, healthy, and friendly personality. And it's remarkable how many people don't realize that being a whiner, being somebody who complains all the time, somebody who questions authority all the time and says, why are you making me do this and what do you want from me? Or if I'm working with a student and they, very seldom, but they might once in a while kind of have a whatever, I don't care, I don't take this shit seriously anyways kind of attitude. They don't realize how that really negatively impacts their education, it negatively impacts their professional career, and furthermore, it can have a very damaging impact on your hireability or your ability to sustain a job. One of the things I tell my students very often is there's a few very important criteria, kind of a checklist you need to go through to know what kind of a career to pursue. And when a director is hiring you for something, when a director is going through that checklist of things that they need to check off to know whether or not you're a good candidate for a job, all of those are fine and dandy. But when that director calls you in for a job interview, they're not calling you in for a job interview to find out whether or not you can draw. A director is never going to call you if they don't know that you're already technically qualified. The one major reason why you're called in for a job interview on Zoom or in person is to find out whether or not you're a jerk, to find out whether or not you question authority, to find out whether or not you have a team-oriented mindset, and whether or not you just want to be the lone star. Do you think you're better than everybody else? Do you not think it necessary to smile and be kind to somebody? Are you the type of person who asks why when somebody says they need something from you? Are you the type of person who doesn't bother to smile and just be generally kind? Well, you'd be surprised how many times I've sat down to give an interview as a director when I was working for companies like EA, for instance, where that artist was very well cut for the job technically. They had the skill, but when I sat down with them for 10-15 minutes and had an interview with them, they were so antisocial, they were so unkind and or aggressive and competitive with me. I walked out of that interview room telling myself, I'd be damned if I was going to hire a jerk like that. Jesus, that was uncomfortable. Because one of the main things a director's trying to find out during the job interview is, can I spend 40 hours with this person? If you're friendly, if you're sociable, if you're chatty, if you're kind but introverted, if you're a little awkward but you mean well, then you're fine. But if you're a jerk, if you're antisocial, if you're cold, if you're minimalist with how you talk and you don't feel like sharing much, you just want to do your job and keep your face in your book, chances are people aren't going to want to work with you because you're a bit of a downer, right? And remember that when you're working in a studio or just working with a client, you want that experience to be a pleasant one. So never underestimate the power of kindness. A smile, a friendly handshake, listening to people, laughing at their jokes, things like that, they go a long way. And if the director has to decide whether or not to hire somebody because they're technically a little bit stronger or strong enough but really, really nice, the person who's really nice usually is the one who's going to get the job. The next important point is you have to have a clear set goal. This is very important. And this is something that very often younger beginner artists tend to struggle with a little bit for understandable reasons. You've just spent several years, 3, 6 or more years in school, building a portfolio, doing assignments, learning about all these different fundamentals, these different principles and stuff like that. But one of the things that a lot of artists don't realize is the fundamentals that apply in education don't directly translate necessarily into a job, meaning you're not expected to be a master of everything when you start working professionally. More importantly, you need to be very good at the things that pertain to your job. So when a director, put myself in this situation, when I was a director looking at different portfolios, it was very clear that art portfolios that tried to be jacks of all trades, just showing everything, watercolor paintings, charcoal landscape drawings, gesture drawings, anatomy drawings, logo design, graphic design, vehicle design, props, characters, everything. And then some was 2D, some was 3D. It was kind of all over the place. And I'm sure there's many of you that are going to admit to having this in your portfolios as well in the comments. Quite confident of that. That to a director means this artist is still trying to figure themselves out. Now, if this is a studio job that they're just looking for more of an entry-level job, it's nothing too demanding, and they're willing to give opportunities to younger artists, which is where I got my first opportunities. So that definitely happens. You can still get a job with a portfolio like that. Once you've got your feet grounded working professionally, you'll see that as time progresses, as you get more into the intermediate level professional, that wishy-washy all over the place type of portfolio is going to start doing more harm than good. And when the director looks at that work, even if they do see something that they like, if that's in the same portfolio with 20, 30 other drawings that are completely different styles and different mediums and everything like that, that's a red flag to a director that you're still trying to figure yourself out and you don't have a lot of experience doing what you're doing. And I know this can be a little bit of a controversial topic because there are some professionals out there, depending on the niche that they advocate for, at least the ones that they're known for, be it design or concept art or fine art. Some professionals, even YouTubers out there, might say you need to have a diverse portfolio to make yourself more employable. There is truth in that, so long as that diversity is focused on a certain niche type of job. So for instance, if you're working in a concept art job for a certain type of studio, and that studio has many different types of projects, and that might require a little bit of diversity, then maybe, being able to adapt yourself to slightly different projects is one thing. But generally speaking, this is far less the case. More often than not, you're looking for somebody who does something consistently and does it really well. And when a director sees enough examples of a consistent quality of work within a consistent type of theme and style, that gives the director confidence that you know what you're doing, you love what you're doing, and you do it frequently and you have a lot of practice, making you immediately employable. I know I can hire Brenda today to do it, and I know she'll be more or less good to go, unless she might need a little assistance. She might need a little assistance from senior artists, but she's more or less good to go. But if I look at an overly diverse portfolio, That's very often when directors might ask for an art test, which not everybody feels is an ethical thing. But the only reason why you'd get an art test is because the director did see some potential in your work. They do need somebody fairly desperately, and they need stronger evidence that you can handle a specific type of job. Now, if that director asks you to do something that doesn't reflect anything in your portfolio, in my opinion, that's a sign of an amateur director. Because as a director, you should never have to ask somebody to do something they're completely unfamiliar with. I would never ask somebody who does a Blizzard style of art to do From Software style of art. Those are two completely different types of artists that require many years of training to adapt to. So if I was to hire somebody just based off of the premise that they're, quote, good, even if they're not compatible with the studio that I'm hiring for, that's a sign that I don't necessarily know what I'm doing. And if you do an art test, chances are you're going to fail it. And if I do hire you on those pretenses, chances are you're going to fail at your job and you're going to feel like shit and you're going to blame yourself. And I would argue that this is both people's fault. It's your fault for applying somewhere you're not qualified, and it's the director's fault for hiring you in the first place when they should know better. To piggyback off of that last point, the second part of the second point is that you clearly understand what's required of you in your desired job. It's important that you, as an aspiring professional or as a working professional, that whenever you apply to a certain job, you have to do a little bit of homework first. The very common mistake that a lot of artists make is that they just feel that they have to be good. And if they're good enough, then people will start hiring them. You can waste a lot of time and energy applying to dozens and dozens of places. Guilty as charged. I did this for years. That you burn yourself out applying and applying and applying, writing up CVs, cover letters, writing tailored messages to directors, to studios, HR, showing up in person, putting on your best face, all that kind of stuff. And people just ghost you. I got ghosted for years. I applied to dozens and dozens of places. Just hiring anywhere where I saw the word artist connected to it. And I would say 1 out of every 30 or 40 applications even got responded to. And out of those, 5% of those gave me a job. So the ROI, the return on investment when it came to my efforts, was very, very low. Fast forward, understanding what my client's looking for, assessing whether or not I have a compatibility with that on a personal and professional level, and applying to very targeted studios that I feel I'm a good fit for, changed that around dramatically for me. Once I had a good sense of who I was artistically, and I knew where I was going artistically, and I was applying to the right type of places, and I understood the demand of that studio, and my portfolio demonstrated that I had the qualifications to relieve them of any stresses, that I could get that job done, all of a sudden I started getting calls back. Furthermore, because I had such a well-tailored portfolio for a certain type of work that showed that I knew what I was doing and understood what that director was looking for, I started getting calls from people who I wasn't even applying to. Because when you become very good at your job, word gets around and you start getting recommended to different people. And I would sometimes get a random email message on ArtStation or Instagram, or a personal email from somebody saying, hey, I discovered you online and we're looking for somebody for this type of job. Would you be interested? Or a friend of mine recommended you because they felt you would be really, really qualified for this type of job because this tends to be your strength. You start to find more opportunities. So there's a bit of a domino effect. As you get better, as you gain that experience, you start to gain a certain type of professional momentum where opportunities start to present themselves more and more. Now, of course, we go through recessions, there's frictions in the job market, there are scares or insecurities in the job market, studios lay people off, and there's less jobs. That's a reality for every human being on the planet, artist or non-artist. But generally speaking, if you want to have the best chances possible, you need to know who you're applying to So don't just send your CVs and portfolios out willy-nilly. Do some homework. Research them online. If you can see personal interviews with directors that work in certain departments for certain projects that you're applying to, it's worth listening to them. Getting to know what their tone is like. Getting to know what their focus is like. Pay attention to the keywords that they use. What's their priorities? How are they trying to present themselves to the studio? Okay, I'll give an example of something random. Let's say, for instance, I wanted to do a desk setup tour video for a company who I just bought a lot of nice stuff from a company called, I have this company in Montreal called Ergon Office that do these beautiful desks and desk trays. Not sponsored. I bought all this stuff myself. They're a local company. Let's say I wanted to do a setup video, a desk setup video for my artist setup. Before I approach them to offer my YouTuber platform to promote their stuff and maybe do some kind of a sponsorship with them, I first have to watch what kind of videos that they produce. What kind of videos are, which YouTubers do Ergon Office tend to send free products to? What kind of tone do they have? How do they present themselves? So if I wanted to do something like that, maybe I would look at Maisie Lee's videos. This young woman who does a lot of cozy desk setup tours with her matcha latte and her nice gentle voice and her relaxing bossa nova music in the background. Or I look at somebody else. Oh, he's also got a very chill vibe. She's got a chill vibe. How aesthetic are they? How do they present it? Are they focusing more on the productivity side of things? Or are they focusing more on the mood and the atmosphere side of things? And by understanding that, if and when I were to approach them personally and say, hey, I'd like to do videos with you, if they look at my videos that I have RGB gamer setups with flashy lights, they're never going to respond, will they? Even though I have a really balling setup, even though it looks really cool, I don't match their brand. And remember that if a studio knows themselves well, they know what their brand is, and you need to know what their brand is. So when you communicate to them, you are presenting them with art and a mood and a personality that matches their brand. Makes sense, doesn't it? This last point is what I would call the, quote, gear check of working as a professional artist. Gear check being a gaming term for this is where your skills are put to the test. Right? You might have kind of been able to wing it up until this point. When you get to this boss, they're going to kick your ass unless you've got your shit in order, right? If you're playing a Dark Souls game, that's the first NPC you encounter as soon as you start the game. Gear check is immediate, right? But when it comes to working professionally, I think that one of the things that artists need to get over, they need to develop a bit of resilience with, is the ability to recognize and address your own weaknesses, even if they hurt your ego. And it's very clear that many artists who, it kind of ties into the first point I made, sometimes you have professional feedback for them and you're saying, hey, if you want to work professionally, if this is your goal, you need to get good at that. And if they're willing to do that, a little bit of the hard work, if they're willing to say, hey, okay, if I want to get somewhere, I need to be able to overcome this. I need to be able to master this. It's going to be a bit fatiguing. It's not my favorite subject in the world. I don't enjoy it all the time, but I know it's necessary of me. If I don't do this, I won't be able to progress. It's like that boss you just can't kill unless you get your skill in check. And if you don't, then quit the game, because you're never gonna progress past a certain point otherwise. A point that matters, and a point that can give you a lot of growth. It can help your employability, your sustainability, your salary, and so forth. And if you're willing to say, okay, I suck at this and I need to fix it, and I know that this is required of me to get my dream job, the sooner you get over that, and the sooner you discipline yourself to be able to sit down and say, I know this is not the most fun work in the world, but I've got to do it. You have my word. You're going to start seeing the way people respond to your work professionally improve. But most importantly, you're going to start seeing your attitude towards yourself change as well. Because as professionals, we need to be able to feel that emotional reward of overcoming ourselves, of being able to tell ourselves that we are capable of doing something now that we didn't think we were capable of doing before. And it's one of those things that I know that as a kid, when I was growing up, I would see the works of these amazing artists that I completely adored, like the Frank Frazettas, for instance. I would look at work by Frank Frazetta or John Howe or Alan Lee or Brian Froud, a lot of those fantasy illustrators that I just looked at their work and I went, or Magic the Gathering artists or Dungeons and Dragons artists. I would look at the art in my monstrous compendium, my D&D monstrous compendium, and think to myself, only the gods are capable of that. I couldn't even fathom how a human being could create something like that. As I got older, I got better. It still felt unfathomable to me. Even when I was in my late teens, I would look at the works by, magic art or fantasy illustrations and things like that, and I thought, I haven't the vaguest clue how they do that. It's just so amazing. It's a skill I'll never attain. No, you can attain it. You absolutely can become that master artist you want. And the ones who do achieve that, who even start to forge a professional path in that direction, are the ones who are capable of looking at themselves and saying, this is going to require hard work. Art's not easy. It's not. It requires a lot of discipline. It requires my ability to do things that I might not necessarily want to do all the time. And the healthier relationship you have with hard work, and furthermore, addressing your weaknesses objectively, not self-deprecation. Self-deprecation's not helpful, but just objectively and constructively, the faster you'll grow and the greater opportunity you have for achieving even greater successes than you thought were possible. That you can find yourself one day regarded as one of the greats. And when you look at those great artists, they didn't become great just because, some deity, some higher power granted them with a gift. No, it's because they got back up on that skateboard and they kept trying over and over and over and over and over and over again. Even though they broke bones and got bruises, they kept going until eventually they could do something they couldn't do. And furthermore, what a lot of other people can't do as well. In fact, one of my favorite things I remember hearing was the sign of a true professional is when somebody is capable of doing something that nobody else is willing to do, that they're willing to push themselves further than other people are. And any one of my greatest achievements in my career have always been those times where I gear checked myself and I said, Adam, you can't keep doing the same shit every day. You need to grow. You need to go somewhere. You're never going to progress in your career unless you get better, unless you push yourself, unless you get better in a healthy way, of course. Don't burn yourself out, right? But every single time I buckled down and I said, just do the work, Adam. I got better. My artwork improved, and so did my career. Now, because you're such an amazing person and an amazing listener, I'm going to offer you a bonus tip. And this one's geared specifically at seasoned professionals. And that is, know who you are, understand your brand, your style, your focus, and your career path. Have confidence in what you do. But don't forget to listen to your audience. Within reason. Within reason. What I mean by that, I've worked with professionals who were so well established that every single time anybody offered them advice, they ignored it. They said, yeah, okay, but that's not what my point is. And at the same time, these same artists, not all of them, but these same artists would also complain that they were really having a hard time gaining popularity or getting more jobs or growing their career. And they were coming to me, to my mentorship, to learn how to overcome that. And I very often found that some of the most resistant artists out there were the ones who were professional because they felt they knew better. Now, of course, I know that when I'm working with a professional as a teacher, I need to address it very differently. I'm not just teaching basic fundamentals. It's really about me understanding that artist's specific tailored needs and be able to help them to fill a gap where they feel they might need it, to the best of my ability, of course. But very often, not always, very often that's met with resistance. And I found that artists that weren't only really good and did manage to find some professional success.
Hey Cookie, how are
but
you?
you could see had the potential for greatness, not just good enoughness, but greatness. were the ones who were always also good listeners. A really good example of just such a person, who's not actually even an illustrator, he's a singer and a musician, Jacob Collier, who's known as, quote, the musician's musician, one of the most celebrated musical geniuses, so they say, of all time. I watched his interview when he was talking to Simon Sinek, one of my personal favorite human beings on the planet. I've read all of his books and I watch his stuff all the time. I really love him to pieces.
Good to hear that, man.
Simon Sinek. As much as I was appreciating the back and forth conversation between Simon and Jacob, what I was paying attention to particularly was how both of them were exceptionally good
I'm
listeners.
all over the place, right?
Jacob was really listening.
Some of my streams
really
are midnight, some of my streams are in the morning,
and vice versa.
you know.
And it became this incredibly lovely.
I wanted to stream yesterday,
collaborative
similar time to the
conversation
other
where you
day,
could tell they were both walking
but I
away
was
with
too
strong
tired,
value
man.
from
I went
each other.
just to sleep.
Despite Jacob's incredible success and his incredible popularity,
I felt kind of
he
like
is in his
guilty,
prime
but
of
then
primes.
I assume like if
He's
I were
incredibly
to,
receptive
force
to
myself
feedback.
to do the
And
stream, then I
argue
would
that
be,
it's his openness
doing it with the
to
low energy, and
listen,
I
the
wouldn't be
fact that he's
like
such a good
progressing that much.
listener and a good learner of his audience that contributes so much to his success and his growth as an artist, because he
The other day I was listening to this music and I find it to be nice. I think you were here. Let me just find it. It had like a nice energy to it, yet it wasn't too, like you can have it in the background kind of thing. Let me just find it. I'm not sure where. Eventually it will show up. Maybe I close the tab. Yeah, probably I close the tab. But what we could do is we could look at the history and find it. Where is... I'm kinda cooked because of my own ignorance. Got a project pending that is due in 5 days. And I got exams from tomorrow. I am a seasoned rain ASMR enjoyer now. Yeah, nothing beat like a rain ASMR. ASMR. I love me like listening to ASMR. Let's find it. It should be like the other, like not yesterday or the day before, because I streamed on Thursday, right? Was it Thursday or was it? It was Thursday or Friday, I'm not sure. I think it was Friday. Yeah, there it is. Maybe it's too loud for you. Let me just... Yeah, no, it's not loud. Which one, Jackie? I forgot. I stopped keeping track, but I think Jackie is the one with the chainsaw, right? I remember it's an old project, right? Jackie. By the way, is it like an anime name, Jackie, or did you name her? You know, like you woke up one day and said, "Her name is Jackie." Let me see. I'm scrolling. Scrolling in your feed, you know, like your message feedback. Scrolling up, just trying to see. Where is it? We'll find her. We're gonna find her, man. This one. Where are you, Jackie? Jackie Chan. I guess this is her, yeah. Is it? Let's see. Yeah, it's Jackie, the one with the chainsaw. I guess you already been like yelling in chat, yes, it's her. But I'm not looking at my chat. The 6 months of work project. Surname from Eternal Return. The game. I got myself some, you know, like some anime modeling and sculpting tutorials that eventually, in a decade or more, I'll be watching. Hopefully, like this style will still be relevant, and the way of doing it still relevant, because, you know, I guess like doing anime character is one of those skills that will be like the first to be, you know, automated by AI. I hope not, because again, I do believe people enjoy doing it. So hopefully AI, and I think already AI, like there are decent results from AI. Hopefully, like it will, you know, just plateaus there and never get better. You know, like AI will never get better after that point in doing these kind of styles. It will always struggle in taking it to the next step. Now I'm doing this model asymmetrically. I liberated myself from symmetry, by the way. And I know it's scary and it's kind of like time consuming because you have to jump between two sides. And probably what's happening is that I have one side that is more developed than the other. But then again, when it's asymmetrical, it does mean, you know, two different sides. No one will know for sure. And it's not like I'm having like, you know, a measuring stick and I'm measuring like exactly each side. I'm trying to overall. With 3D, it's harder to make AI than it is to just make good tools. Yeah, but I guess again, it probably like we will be hit by AI. It's just like how much. The other day I saw like a nice approach to doing, you know, like 3D and AI. Maybe not all will agree on it. So there is this dude, and I think he's like an art director or something. What he did, and again, it's not like this is the only guy who tried it, probably like a lot. And I've seen like even earlier, like in the early days of AI, there was this girl on her YouTube channel doing this thing. But like this dude, like he was doing it more, you know, with, you know, like he have more authority, let's say, when it comes to his skill and knowledge. So what he does, he do like the 3D model, then he feed it into AI and let AI, you know, produce a much more realistic version of what he created. So you can say technically it is his work, like he kind of like have the base, but he did not perfect the base to the highest level, and then he asked AI to inject more realism to it, like in both still image and video. I think also AI at the moment would be good to fill the gaps, right? Like if you have like an open board and you have like a distant area that you know like it's off limit, so like your character is not gonna go there, or maybe it's at the top of the buildings and stuff. So like prompting AI to generate like, let's say, trash can or something like that, just to fill in these areas without, you know, like the need to go and like build every single thing. Probably like you know, like the things that used to take a lot of time, and like hiring like, you know, outsourcing the studios from like, you know, East Asian countries to do these kind of like, you know, again debatable, like I can say it's boring, these tasks, but technically like the less interesting stuff. Yes, I have seen those low-key a valid approach, but then again hope them images are licensed. It was like no one knows exactly where AI is going now. There is a lot of like, you know, I think AI will still be there. It's just like, will companies drop AI? Like I've seen it so many times. I'm not sure like if that's just like, you know, wishy-washy thinking, or is it gonna be like an actual thing soon? That like, you know, American companies are investing way too much in AI that they will get broke because simply like there isn't enough use cases for AI at the moment to make it profitable. So what they're doing now is non-profitable, or kind of like it doesn't do like that much profit yet. Let's just turn off symmetry because her hair here is not symmetrical. So let's just do that. Who knows? Maybe like Armageddon will happen before or like Fourth World War will erupt, and you know, we don't have what we have now. Like we no more living in the same world. I need to soften some of these maybe. Just use a brush like this to soften her nostrils a bit. How's school like? Is it like difficult? Because again, like your program is kind of related to art, right? It's an art program. Is it hard? You know, like, are you like, what's your grade now? Like your score? What it's called? Something like, not GDB, because I know like GDB what it is. But what they call it, I forgot what they call it. You know, like there's like an abbreviation for it. You know, like your score at school. So the nostril here, probably we need to elevate this area just a bit because I feel it's too much, so that, you know, like it's more on level with the nostril. Maybe this is wrong, but we'll see. And I don't want like this to be wishy-washy area. It doesn't look good at the moment with all the wishy-washiness. Do you watch animes nowadays? Or do you have time to do such thing? I guess like since you're, like you have exams, I don't think you have time. Everything. So let's say like if you were to kind of like have the total score of your, overall performance at school, it will be roughly 75 and above. That's good. That's, hard-working student. Anyway, what is that? Yeah. That's kind of like the weird thing, like us, like, 3D artists. Like the thing that brings you to like doing 3D would be like games, anime, movies, blah blah blah. And eventually once you start working in that industry and like developing your skills to get hired eventually, it's the thing that you stop doing is what kind of like brought you in. And it becomes like this guilty thing, like you can't do it anymore. Actually, that's one of the reasons why I'm forcing myself to get back to playing games. Like, what's the point? I love 3D because of, games, movies and stuff. So yeah, I want to give myself at least like, and especially because I think like also like we should do that a little bit, maybe not too much, to keep relevant. Like you need to kind of like just keep up, because I actually like the other day I watched an interview, like a podcast with a 3D artist, and he said like he kind of like he's content not watching or playing games and stuff. But how can you keep up with like what's like think of it this way, like if you're making games, like actually this is the problematic area, and like some people will complain about it, that game makers, they don't know what people want. And I think that's like the main reason. Like they got too involved in the art and the technical side, and they're no more like, because like let's say from the older generation, like many who works now are from the older generation, and they trying to make those games, and maybe like like what people love now when it comes to games, I wouldn't say like completely changed, but like they like a new style of games came to the field that's slightly different, or maybe people enjoy it more. There's not so much anime. You should get back into it slowly and carefully, surgically, that you don't like end up like watching way too much and not doing work. But I think you need to, it's fine to leave it. For example, like I've been away from anime for the past like 5-ish years or more, and I found myself like in the last couple of months I've watched like 3 or 4, again I'm not sure, 3 or 4, and I watched them, like one of them is 2 seasons, one season, and the other one that I'm watching now is 2 seasons. So I'm like in the first season, eventually I'll jump to the second season of it. I'm not watching to be honest, like the most recent ones. Actually no, yeah, 4 now I'm sure, like, because when I think of it now, there are 4. And 3 of them 2 seasons and 1 of them 1 season, so technically by number you can say I've watched 6 animes, like I'm in the 6th and jumping to the 7th eventually. And to be honest, like, you know what, I know it takes time from you, but we're lying to ourselves. You're not doing 3D all that time. You're not like focusing on 3D, and it's just like you're trying to avoid that guilt. Because now I'm watching anime and even playing game, And I don't think this has affected my productivity that much, because to begin with, like, my productivity I wasn't like honest, and I wasn't like using 100% of my time into, like doing 3D. And I don't think it's actually a doable thing on the long run. Like, you get tired and you need to have other activities in life. So of course, like, you could do it maybe during the exams period, or like if you, let's say, you want to kind of like evolve one skill in a short period of time, maybe you could like dedicate a couple of months or more. But if you can like extend it for way more, you will find that no, you don't, like, that time is not, you're not honest about it. You might just convince yourself you've been, doing this or that, but you're not. Especially now that I start thinking of, like making, like one day to start making my games. Let's see how far that goes, that idea. Think of it this way, by the way, if you can make one game and that game have decent success, it will be, like worth more than like years of your life in a career in a studio. So and especially if it was fun. Send me the new stuff. Let's see quickly. Cookie. Nice, here we go. Nice, I see. I can't tell exactly where the changes, but I can, judge it regardless of like changes. Like regardless of what it was looking like before. So I'm just like looking at it as, something new that you just showed me right now. Anatomy looks not too shabby, right? It is decent. Especially for an anime. I actually point out one thing in anatomy that you could change, but then I think with a flat shader, this does not matter. Like, this is not important with a flat, anime shader. But what I wanted to point out would be this, which is anatomical. Like, this is related to anatomy, right? So if you drag this and bring this, and so see here, your biceps extend way too much. I would try not like define the biceps earlier, but like this turn here, soften it and maybe shift it a little bit up. Like, and technically it would be like this. I will elevate this area up so like it's not in the shadow here, like, and this kind of end a little bit high, like earlier, like this kind of like maybe you wrap, like start, doing this turn, which is very subtle, and I know like and then like this here goes a bit higher, because at the moment the way it is, yeah, I think this can be slightly higher. So but basically, like if I were to go to drawing and just use like a thin line, like probably like I'll do it so that it starts from like here and then blend there. Again, I suck, or again because of the software that I'm using. So here, like, I'll move this to here. Like this will be as high as there, and then blend in, and then goes back like that. And the biceps, instead of it like kind of like here, it happens like that transition. This will be more full. Like I'll make it fuller and make that transition happen slightly earlier. So like if you think of it like the muscle end like there, and this start, getting inside. But again, keep everything gentle. I love your approach of keeping it gentle and not like trying to, not trying to force it. But yeah, overall nice. Because if you think of it now, at the moment, like this section, like even from the deltoid up down to here, is kinda, if we go there, this section is kinda taller than this section, or as tall. When I think like your forearm is a little bit longer than your forearm here is a little bit longer than your. And sometimes, as I said, like it's not even about longer. It's just about, like the illusion, like where the muscle starts and end. Kind of make it like that. Because anyway, like technically, your biceps should end way earlier. Like it probably end here. But I know, like this is cartoonish, so it doesn't need to be this, like how it is in reality. But think of it this way: like her elbow is happening here. So your character elbow is happening like around here, right? That's kind of like where the elbow is. And the biceps technically is this like shape that have a tendon. Think of it like a string, and this string will go to this, right? Like to this part of the, and it's just like when it pull, it can like move the forearm in that direction, right? And of course, like nothing in like that in reality. Like things start, gradually going into like this kind of shape, and this shape, like it keep like fleshy muscle. Then eventually, somewhere there, it stop being fleshy muscle, and then it's just like this stringy like material, which is kind of like a ligament, I guess called ligament, or I forgot what it's called, but it will send that. And of course, don't forget, like, because this is cartoony, second, even in real life, like, you don't see these things. Like, it will be covered with, skin. There will be, like, muscles, other muscles, like minor muscles around it. That it doesn't really, like, take this very specific shape, right? It kind of like, because technically, behind the biceps, there's another muscle that goes wider. And same thing, since it's tendon. Fascia doesn't have like that contribution to the body. Fascia is just like a layer of think of it like a rubber. So fascia doesn't like give you much, but also it could help mask the definitions. Also, it could. Fascia is when you look at like your abdomen muscle, you see like the white material around it on the sides and in between, and some of these are fascia. They should add the draw up here, like they need to do these changes. What did I do? Where is the freaking thing? Why we don't see it? Hey Monlet, how are you, man? Welcome to the stream. Early morning stream, right? you have one eye that is a little bit higher than the other one. So let's inject some of that asymmetry. Got symmetry on. This is perfect. I think when I publish this, if I publish it eventually, I'm not sure, like, I might not, like, label it, as the actress name. I might just, like, put it as a, as an artwork, right? And leave it to people to figure out if they can, like, see the likeness or not. It will be, I guess, like, it will be more rewarding, but I'm not sure, like, which one would be more beneficial in terms of, like, in terms of, like, like, for hireability reasons. But I think, again, if it were up to me, like, I would go with, just leave it untitled. Title it with something like a female portrait, a female character, whatever. Even naming her Jackie, like Cookie. Or maybe, like, use one of her screen names, like one of her, like, character names from a movie that is not popular, like maybe in her early days, so that it's not direct. Yeah, let me just see, like, I want to see, like, with everything, how this looks like with the latest updates. I think I need to bring back some of the definition to that cheek. And maybe flatten it a bit and bring the jaw in, maybe. Let's go at level 3. Maybe near the ear, just, like, define it near the ear there. Because it looks too thick for my liking. next, what we need to do fix, just to point them out for me to work on them on the next session. So we need to do fix the nostril, right? And just create a new layer, use a smaller brush and just point out things. And let's just pick a nice color, red. So fix nostril. I'm not gonna do like no text, but just point out areas that need to be fixed. Probably this need to be like more arced, so maybe this, and for this one more flat-ish up to this point, so maybe here. This line needs to be also been addressed. This goes probably here, also this one, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and let's see. This is more straighter, so 5 straight, 10, and let's see, maybe narrow the chin a little bit. Narrow chin. Is this with an I or E? I don't know. Anyway, so 5, 6. So this is number 6. Yeah, for now, these are some of the changes that we want to do. Let's save it. Just keep it on my desktop. Okay, that's it for now. Have a good day, guys. I'll be back maybe today with another stream. If not, then probably it will be tomorrow or the day after. We'll see how that goes. I think like tomorrow is a perfect day for me to stream because you know of how my schedule is brain usually on Mondays. But again, I don't know, like things change like on the spot. But yeah, thank you guys for joining the stream. Have a good day and see you either later today or tomorrow. Bye bye.